welcome everyone to our webinar today. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. We are, like Dominguez said, going to walk through trends in the construction industry. And today in part one, we're actually looking back. We're going to take a look at 2024 and some of the things that maybe defined the year as far as technology and construction are concerned. And not just hit some buzzwords, but actually talk about real solutions that happen. And so before we do that, we've got a quick poll question for everyone, just to see what you think were some of the top trends of last year. So we're going to pop that up and see what our audience thinks as the biggest construction trends of 2024. We've got things like AI, 3D printing, autonomous equipment, or maybe I didn't list it. And you have other things that you've noticed trending. So go ahead and throw a few results in there. We'll let those collate for a bit. And while they are, I would like to introduce you to our panelists today. So we have two awesome panelists that we're going to allow to introduce themselves. First, Larry, I'd like to give you the opportunity. Why not tell everyone who you are, where you're from, and one exciting thing that has happened in 2025 for you.
Good morning, AJ. I'm Larry Adams. I'm Director of School Bond Projects for Santa Clara Unified School District. I manage a bond program here. We're in our 28th year of managing general obligation bonds. To date, the district has passed about $1.7 billion in one-time funding. We've built several schools, and we've modernized all of our facilities at least once. And some of our facilities are being modernized the second time around. We're a public California K-12 school district. Our enrollment is about 14,000. We're not, there are many school districts larger than we are, but we represent, I think, a significant sector of the construction economy. There are a lot of districts like us in this range, and we do a lot of construction every single year. One of the exciting trends, I think, for 2024 is we got serious about managing our assets and the assets that we put in place. And so we've leveraged the Kahua platform to be able to manage the parts and pieces of the components, building components that we put in place, and gather the data that we can then pass on to our maintenance department so that they can effectively use those assets through their full life cycle.
That's awesome. AJ. Thank you, Larry. And then Nicholas, how about you? Name, who you work for, and one exciting thing that's happened this last year.
Thank you, AJ. I'm Nicholas Johnson. I'm Chief Evangelist at Kahua, AJ's counterpart. And I've been in the industry for a long time. Larry reminded me when he talked about modernizing projects that years ago they modernized. You know, I spent the first half of my career in design services for a company that also did program management. And the best projects that we did were public projects. They were built up and since then have been torn down. So I know I'm getting to the back half of my career when your best projects have come and gone. So my job at Kahua is to help our company understand what's important to the industry and help the industry understand what's important about Kahua, what makes us different from the other solution providers on the market. Won't spend much more time talking about that, but I'm happy to engage with anybody afterwards. What did I see last year? I heard more conversation about AI, but I did not see that affect our industry as much. You know, it was a trend of conversation. It was not a trend of action. The thing that I saw grow a lot last year was modular and prefab construction, and I think that'll continue.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Thank you, Nicholas. Real quick, we'll take a look at the results of that poll. And it looks like AI was the heavy winner as far as what people saw as the biggest trend. But like you said, it could have just been the one that was talked about, right? The squeaky wheel syndrome. So, all right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll dive right in. And before we, go too far and too deep into a lot of these topics, we kind of wanted to level set and ask a question of, like, why are we here today to begin with, right? How do we maintain and increase our productivity in the face of all of the challenges that we have in construction? Rising costs, material, labor shortages, volatile scope expectations. I mean, shorter schedules. We have all these things working against us. So how do we continue to increase productivity? And to start off, Larry, I'll throw that question to you for your thoughts. Against all of these negative factors that have kind of been thrown at us, what are you thinking? Why are we even trying to counter this?
Well, I think when we talk about trends, one of the big trends that we're seeing is an increasing rate of change on just about everything. Our schedules are getting shorter. The expectations of our stakeholders, what they expect to see in our projects, is increasing, and it changes. We can have a significant change in the scope of a project very late in the project life cycle, and we're a public agency. We have to respond to our stakeholders, so we've got to deal with that. We deal with cost escalation. We all deal with that. But something that's just as important and just as volatile, I think, is regulation escalation. Just to give you an example, we got a new requirement about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Well, it was less than 2 weeks ago, as a result of the fires in Los Angeles. Now, before we can start a project, we have to file a fire management plan with the division of the state architect before we can start a project. That just popped up out of we didn't even know that it was coming. That's just an indication of I think, an increasing rate of change of how we have to respond to the regulatory requirements. With the COVID situation that we had, and project, material shortages and labor shortages, that's become pretty much a way of life for us. So when we're planning a project and we're trying to decide what the specifications should be for an equipment or materials, we're looking ahead to see will these things be available when we need them. Yep. And so we invest one-time money. It's taxpayer money. We only get it one time, and we have an obligation to make sure that those funds are spent properly and wisely, and they produce something that works for our public educators.
Yeah, and I think we're going to dive into a little bit more some of what you hinted at there with your material, how you get out in front of material pricing. I think we'll hit that a little later. Nicholas, okay. What about you? The challenges that we're facing as an industry, I mean, you see them every single day. You're out in the industry. What are your thoughts?
Well, AJ, you asked specifically in your first question about, you said as we manage these assets through their life cycle. So those words resonated with me because we do a lot of work at Kahua on what we refer to as asset-centric project management. It's a methodology for improving the way we manage asset data. And there are things we can do there. Something that resonated from what Larry said is he talks about regulatory requirements. Larry can do nothing about that. He has to respond to it. We can't do much. those of us on the phone today, or those of us tuning in, those of us in our industry can't do a whole lot about material cost, okay, and about supply shortages, but we do have to respond to them. So, my hope is that we continue to see new materials being developed, which are less expensive and easier to use and improve our processes. That's not for us to do. I say that there are construction firms, there are a lot of modular firms that actually have strong R&D branches that develop new ways to do modular construction, and they do that with new materials. I love when we see that from recycled materials. I'll go back to the conversation about these assets that we create, because one of the things we can do is do a better job of managing what we build after we build it. Most of us tuning into this call, we're construction folks, we're project people. We build and create, but what we build and create, we hand over to someone to operate. Larry's responsible for both those sides. He's got to build it, and he's got to make sure that they operate it properly and maintain it until the next bond program comes along. So we need to do a better job of taking care of what we have. And one way we do that is simply with better information when we open up that facility so that we manage it properly from the start. One of the things we can't control, AJ, is labor. I'm a strong believer that part of the way we're going to solve the labor shortage in our industry is by involving women. I'm a big champion. I'm probably the best cheerleader for one of my construction heroes. Her name is Melanie Ford. She's the director of construction at the University of Georgia, but she's also one of the leaders of a group called the Athens Area Women in Construction. And they do phenomenal work with young ladies, high school and middle school girls, to teach them that construction is cool, as my friend AJ likes to say. So they're growing up a generation of workers that can help us solve this labor shortage. So kudos to her. There's more we can do, better tech, more AI, more automation, and more modular. I think those are some of the solutions that I'm hearing people propose and I'm seeing people use in real life on real projects.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think we'll go through a couple of those as we get through this, but you're right, construction is cool. That's one of my favorite things to say. So let's kind of start there then with both Larry and Nicholas hinted at materials, modular construction, things that we can do to maybe support the supply chain. So Larry, one of the first things that was kind of trendy in 2024, there were a lot of articles, some case studies, different things that popped up on it, was 3D printing. And so just kind of right out of the gate, the question for you is, have you used that yet, or do you think it's ready, or is it still kind of in the testing phase, the idea of 3D printing materials for schools?
Well, from our perspective, I think it's in the very early stages. All of our projects have to be approved by the Division of the State Architect, and there are very tight requirements on anything structural or fabrication or anything that might involve seismic safety. So it's pretty tough for a manufacturer to get a product approved by the Division of the State Architect. That being said, I think if we went into some of our more sophisticated contractors, into their shops, we might see it being used for jigs or prototyping or things like that. I think it's coming, but I think as a school district, we'll probably see it on the tail end of implementation. But what we are seeing a lot of more and more is prefabrication. An example is we built a high school performing arts center about 3 years ago, and it has some very complicated acoustic wall sections built up of light gauge metal framing with custom drywall. Those wall sections were fabricated in a shop in Las Vegas. The drywall was applied and they were shipped to the job site and assembled in the field. And we're seeing more and more of that. In the contractors that I've talked to, MP&E, and now even light gauge metal framing and drywall, if they can trust the models, they'll fabricate as much as they can in their shops and install it in the field. It's more efficient and it's more safe because their shop is probably a much safer environment than the field situation. It's much easier to control in the shop. So going from digital to the real product, either through fabrication or 3D printing, and I think that's coming, is going to be a more and more trend. I expect it might be something like AI, where it's talked about and there are a lot of false starts, but once it takes hold, it moves pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we have a second poll question for the audience to kind of see and gauge their where they're at with both 3D printing and or modular construction prefab type work. What's interesting about this is I can recall back in 2008, 2009, visiting a mechanical subcontractor here in town. I'm in the Omaha area, and they were prefabbing restroom fixtures, right? Like the men's and women's restroom, all the piping so that it could be set in place into the wall before the mason came through and put up the stone. And I mean, that was 15, 16, 17 years ago. We were talking about prefab, and Larry, you mentioned false starts. Sometimes false starts are what happens. And so we'll see real quick how many people maybe are using modular construction on those poll results.
AJ, as you look toward that, I'll just add, Larry brought up two good points. If not 3D printing, it's modular because that's in the plant, that's in the factory, and it's so much more efficient, so much safer,
right.
and generally cost neutral or cost negative. So there's only good things about modular. I'll continue to preach that sermon. But one of the things that I've seen is that the modular builders now are doing 3D printing inside their shop. The big advances in 3D are going to come. I think you and I had a conversation about this about a month ago. There was an expose on a large item printed on the site by a large 3D printer. Those are really cool. That's still a little bit out there. Those are still harder to do, but bringing that 3D printing device into the modular shop is becoming very common now.
Agreed. Real quick, let's see if we can pop up those poll results. So an overwhelming yes on people seeing prefab. Prefab and modular, it's just one way. 3D printing is another. Larry, from your experience, are there other ways that you can improve flexibility when it comes to material procurement and supply chain issues? I think you kind of hinted at this in your early answer with maybe getting ahead of lead times. Are there other things that you're doing that are helping you with the supply chain?
We had a project a couple of years ago where we replaced the roofing on, I think, 7 schools over a summer, and we replaced composition shingles with a standing seam metal roof. And what we found was we'd heard through our connections with our roofing contractors that there was a shortage of coil stock. So we reached out to a local manufacturer, and we were able to procure enough coil stock to do our projects over the summer. So one of our strategies here over many years of working in this community is to try to engage directly as possible with our trade contractors. And we've really benefited from that. So on the roofing project, that we probably couldn't have done that project. We certainly wouldn't have got the schools done by the time school started without having those types of relationships. Just one thing I want to throw out, since we were talking about modular construction, our district began buying, they bought modular classrooms back in the 1950s. I find drawings in the files of buildings that were built off-site and then trucked to the site and bolted together. So modular construction in California has been around for a long time. Portable classrooms started being installed here in the late 1980s. We have over 250 portable classrooms scattered around the district right now. And they've been a key tool in order to keep up with enrollment growth and enrollment volatility. And we've also done a lot of modular construction where major building components have been built off-site, trucked to the site, and assembled. And so for every project we do that involves new construction, as part of our process, we take a look at, could we accomplish this with modular construction? One of the difficulties is trying to adapt a modular system to our individual requirements. And a lot of times we're not able to do it efficiently, accomplish the goal with modular components, but we certainly look at it with every project. One of the things I hope for is that technology improves, is that we have a digital means of transferring our requirements through to the modular supply chain, so that if we need a classroom that's 30 by 32 rather than 24 by the length of a modular classroom, we're able to communicate those requirements and really take advantage of flexibility. And I think our suppliers, I think the trend is being able to provide modular facilities in a more flexible way. I know hospitals have been doing this for quite some time. If I could buy restrooms, modular restrooms, we would do it in a heartbeat, because in a new construction project, the toughest schedule component is trying to get our restrooms done in time. So if we could somehow buy modular restrooms and integrate them into our projects, we would do it.
There, any contractors listening, if you want to work with Larry, figure out how to modularize his restrooms. All right, shifting gears a bit. Supply chain's just one thing, but there have been a lot of other hot topics throughout the year. And Nicholas, one of those hot topics came right in December as CMMC certification and requirements for federal work, or DoD work specifically, became a real thing. Now we've heard about it for a long time because we all knew it was coming. Now it's here. Cliff Notes version. What does that mean for contractors?
It means if you haven't started the process of this certification, you're behind. If you work in the defense industrial base, the DIB it's referred to, and you have not begun pursuing this certification, you're in trouble on your future jobs. So CMMC, the Cyber Security Maturity Model Certification, went into effect officially December 16th. It had been coming. Its announcement date floated a bit, and phase one went into effect last month. It will continue to roll out in phases. The short of it is that any RFPs that are answered, any bids in the DoD space, are going to require this certification for anyone who handles sensitive, unclassified information. So if you're a DoD contractor, if you work for any of the branches or any of their bases, or you do any work related to the Department of Defense, you're going to have this certification in order to do this work, in order to handle their documents. It's a pretty extensive process. I was about to say I don't want to scare people, but maybe it's time that we should scare people. If this is a big part of your business, hopefully you've already begun pursuing this. It's a huge security effort. It is currently DoD, but we saw, I'm not sure what you'd refer to this, but it was put forth last week by the General Services Administration, by the Corps of Engineers, and by NASA, that this regulation be extended outside of the DoD to all federal agencies. So now, instead of just that 10 or 15% of the construction business, now it's going to be 30 to 40% that is federally funded or federally related. If you do that work, you're going to have this certification, which simply says to the certifier that you have done the things required. It means you know how to handle sensitive information, you know how to treat it, and you know how to take care of it so that it can't get in the wrong hands. Does that answer the question, AJ?
It does. So, I mean, you said maybe not to scare people, but maybe we should. Are there things that contractors can be doing right now to avoid work stoppage if they don't have this?
Well, they should be pursuing this, and they should have a consulting firm to do that. This is a big topic of interest to Kahua because our products are FedRAMP authorized. We have a FedRAMP, which is the Federal Risk Authorization Management Program. It's the cybersecurity standard for cloud computing. As a cloud service provider, we've achieved this highest standard, and we continue to escalate inside that standard. FedRAMP is not the same as CMMC, but if you're using a FedRAMP tool to handle all your project documents and your project information, that part of what you're doing is covered for the CMMC requirements. Now, CMMC does more. You've got to, you might have to change the locks on your door or document the way you make your team change their passwords every few months. There's more to it than just what Kahua does. But for the part that we can help you with, if you're using a tool like ours, that part's covered. So it's really a huge head start in a contractor or subcontractor's desire to gain this certification. But you do need to be working with one of the companies that is authorized to do the gap analysis and help you through the certification process. You need to engage with a different firm that would be your third-party auditor. And between those two, you work your way towards this certification process. We think we give you a big head start. Ask your consulting agent about that.
So speaking of...
AJ, actually, I had sent a slide in. I don't, if we have access to that. This is actually information not from Kahua's site, but this is from Deloitte. Everyone knows, and probably Deloitte's as reputable and trustworthy as they come. You can find this information. The link is at the bottom of this, and I can ask your team, our team, to put that link in also for those. You can see it on the screen, though. This is from Deloitte's page, and it talks about the process of CMMC certification. I highlighted the 3 bullets. There actually were 5 bullets here. I asked to show these 3 because those are the 3 areas where a product like Kahua, a FedRAMP product, can really help. Okay, there is kind of a grace period. Bullet number 3 says if you can demonstrate that you're 80% there, that 80% of the controls are covered, then you can get a temporary authorization. We believe that our product can almost help you get to 80% right away. Again, that's a question for your consultant, but a FedRAMP product like ours gets you really a long way there. External service providers must be FedRAMP authorized. When you're talking about project management systems, there's just a few that have FedRAMP authorization. Kahua is the first to attain that, and we're still the leader in that area. And then there are what were referred to as subcontractor flow down requirements. It means if you're a general contractor and you're required to have CMMC, understand that all the subs you hire are going to have that same level of certification. The fact that Kahua can be used in a federal network, that subcontractors project management tool Kahua can talk to general contractors project management tool Kahua, that's a huge advantage for everybody. So I hope this information will be helpful to the people tuning in.
Appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's a perfect segue, because one of the other things I feel like saw a resurgence in 2024 was just the project management system in general. Like the whole concept of a digital transformation we saw, and maybe the buzziness around AI did this, or the fact that we're getting better at analytics, or maybe it was cybersecurity, but something made the concept of a digital transformation and the project management software a 2024 trend again. Larry, in your mind, what do you believe caused this increased focus on construction management solutions in 24?
Well, I think from our perspective, we've been a Kahua user since 2021, but in 2024, I think we had an increased focus on being able to work with data and data analytics. We took advantage of some capabilities that we hadn't leveraged before. we were able to get data directly out of Kahua, independent of reports. We could go into something called a data store and actually download data that we could then work with outside of Kahua. We have a financial accounting system that we don't really have access to. It's the financial accounting system is owned and managed by the County Department of Education. So it's a bit difficult to get data out of that, but we have to align our Kahua cost management processes with our financial accounting system, and that reconciliation can be difficult to do. And so last year we made some big strides in being able to pull that data out of our financial accounting system, pull it out of Kahua into readily available data management tools. We've used Excel, we've used Google, and being able to extract information out of those two sources. I think another aspect over the last year that has been significant for us is being able to start to bring contractors into our Kahua network. We opened bids late last year on a brand new school, and we wrote into the specifications a requirement that the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical trade contractors, we do multiple prime construction, those trade contractors have to set up their own Kahua domains. And then we will share our domain with those trade contractors' domains. And then we'll be able to collaborate directly on RFIs, submittals. We're working on applications for payment. And the other big thing that we're incorporating into that is our asset system. And so we'll have a direct data exchange on, for example, mechanical equipment. That data will go into the mechanical contractor's Kahua system, and then we'll directly exchange that data. So through the processes of submittals, construction, turnover, that's all of that data is in our system. And now we'll be able to integrate that with our maintenance and operations systems so that they can manage those assets throughout the entire life cycle. So, we were on the Kahua platform, but I think the last year we were able to leverage it. Just maybe a little bit of background, because I've been here so long. When we started here with our bond program, we were managing everything in spreadsheets. And then shortly after that, we were able to implement a system where we could start to get data into a system that instead of individual spreadsheets, we had modules that we could work back and forth with. And we used that for about 5 years, and then we migrated to Constructware. And with Constructware, we had the advantage of getting that data into modules that we could coordinate. But we could also leverage. We could also customize that data to a certain extent. What we couldn't do was modify the processes or the user interface. And so we had to live with that, and we made that work for us for 16 years. And then when we migrated to Kahua, then with the platform, we were able to start to modify our processes and our user interface. And so it was a paradigm change, but it was a very significant, gave us a very significant ability to map our processes into the tools we use. And so last year we were able to take some additional steps in order to make all of our tools work for us.
And I think that's a really important note, making the tool work for you instead of the other way around, right? Instead of you having to conform to the tool. And especially when it comes to data, we've been making decisions based on reports for a long time, but I've always looked at a report like a warning light on your dashboard, like something already went wrong, and now it's telling me. What about predictive analytics, right? And so like the gas gauge, where we're predicting when things are going to go by, or the miles to empty. Nicholas, with all this extra data, are we ready for predictive analytics in construction? Like, can we finally do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, we are. But AJ, I want to back up just a second and comment on something Larry said, because you talked about speed of decisions. And in this scenario that Larry painted, where his subcontractors use their own project management tool to do their own documentation, something that they have to do, whether or not he requires them to use his tool, they've got to create their own project documents, right? Everybody has to have their own records. If you make me do it in your solution and your solution isn't my solution, then I have to do it twice. In this scenario, they do it one time. That's great because everything that gets done on that project, Larry pays for. So if his subs have to do it twice, ultimately he's paying for it in the cost of his projects. That's one thing. But the more important point I wanted to get to, and we saw this play out in other projects where we've deployed something we call the Kahua Connected Network. It's that scenario where he talks about where the sub's project management tool will speak directly to his project management tool. What it means is that as soon as they create data that is shareable, he has access to it. He has visibility to it. In another scenario, and let's just say that in another company, in another place, the owner has a project management tool and the contractor decides to use exactly the same project management tool and the subcontractors all use the same project management tool. But that tool doesn't talk to itself outside of its own domain. So if I'm using product ABC at the owner and the contractor is using ABC and they don't talk to each other, there's no visibility there. I still have to create it twice. So what generally would happen in that scenario is I'm going to create my documentation in my own system. And on occasion, once a week, twice a month, I'm going to upload it all into your system, Mr. Owner. So you're going to have weekly or biweekly access. And what I'm going to do, by the way, is probably upload a bunch of PDF records of what is data to me. It is now a document to you. So it's just so much better than the scenario we were using before for the last 30 years. Are we ready for AI? AJ, yeah. And AI can cure some of these problems, but the best solution is always going to be to let people author their own data and share that appropriately. I know that inside our organization, we're going to use AI to build better tools and to capture more data in places where we couldn't capture it. We're going to use AI to automate very manual processes. We're a vendor and can do that. And I would say, yeah, we're doing it now. It's not just coming, it's here, it's happening. What I would say to the average construction project owner who's not going to go out and develop AI tools, I say this is your time. You will begin to take advantage of these things as we vendors provide them for you. This is your time to get your data right. Because when you have the best AI tools in the world and you can do marvelous things with the information that's in your house, well, it's only going to be as good as the data that you've got. We'll all have access to the same AI tools. All the stuff that's in the public domain is out there for everybody. That's why it's called public. The only thing that's going to separate you is your own data. So use this time, use this year to get your data house in order. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And so along with that, we'll throw up our last poll question here real quick to see if people have been using AI. So the question being, are you experimenting with AI? But notice the answers, because there's some at work and at home, or maybe you're just playing with it yourself a bit at home, or you're not really looking at it at all. I'm actually curious to see the disparity between A and B in this particular instance. I've had a number of conversations lately with people in the industry about how AI is like the new BYOD, bring your own device. Like back in the early 2010s, when everybody wanted the iPhone and the company would only supply the BlackBerry for security reasons, even people started showing up and saying, I'll just use my own phone, right? Like I'm going to bring my own device. And AI is kind of at that point right now. Well, if I don't have an AI strategy, I'll just go get my own ChatGPT account or whatever it might be. And so if you as a company aren't paying attention, they could be sharing data with an AI solution and you don't even know about it. So let's take a look real quick at these results and see what we got. 50% both, 40% just personally. So that's a little bit more of the both than I expected. That's good to see. Larry, what about you? Nicholas says we're ready for it. Are your teams experimenting and leveraging AI at this point?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest trends from last year, and it kind of came in through the back door. We had some staff with a construction management firm that were early adopters, and they started showing us things in project meetings, and we're using them. We have some tools that will listen into our meetings and prepare agendas. So when at the end of a meeting, we have an agenda that's our minutes that are probably 80-90% there, and we just fine tune them and then upload them, and we're done. We take our project manuals, we load our project manuals into a tool, and we can ask it questions. A 2,000-page project manual with all of our specifications, and we can ask it a prompt on, tell us about wood doors. What's the specification for wood doors? What are the submittal requirements for wood doors? And out pops the answer. Is it, 100% reliable? I don't know, maybe not, but it's certainly light years beyond where we were before. I think we're just at the beginning stages of what we're able to do with AI. But if I walk down the hall into my team, everybody's on board with it.
Yeah, it's coming, and like Nicholas said, we're working on it too. But the thing that's more important than all the trendy buzzwords is AI is dependent on data. Machine learning has to learn before it can answer, and so if your data house is not in order, yep, that's going to be topic number one. All right, well, we've kind of come to the end of kind of our prepared questions. So now we've got some Q&A, and the chat has been filling up. So I've got a handful of them for you all, and I'll try to kind of go back and forth. The first one, Nicholas, is going to come to you. It's very, very pointed. Is Kahua CMMC certified? And are there any competitors in the space that you know of that are?
Okay, that's a really good question. And the answer is simple. No, we're not CMMC certified, but we don't need to be. That's not our role. So this certification is going to apply to contractors and subcontractors that handle documents. We're in a different space. We fall under the cloud service providers areas of cybersecurity concerns. So it's not something that we're going to get. And having Kahua does not give you CMMC. But what we believe, and what I've said before, is that it will give you a big head start in that process. Mm-hmm. Again, this is something that you should involve your consultant in that conversation. We think it's a really huge head start in what's a long, exhaustive, and expensive process. So if we can help you knock a lot of that scope out, that will be a big help to you. And I say that because we are FedRAMP authorized. There are other FedRAMP authorizations. You can find them on the FedRAMP marketplace. Just Google that, you'll find it. There are other project management tools, but there are few and far between. So look hard, know what you're getting. I'm glad to take more questions about that if we need more clarity about that.
Yep. All right, Larry, the next two come to you. First off, specifically the chat bot that you just referenced, the AI chat bot that you referenced for finding the door in the project manual, what's it called? Someone's asking what that product happens to be.
I believe it's a Google tool, but I'm not quite sure what application they're using. I know they're using, the district has Gemini available to all of its employees. Some of the team members are using ChatGPT. There may be other tools out there, but I'm not sure I know which ones they are. I apologize for that.
Oh, that's all right. We can follow up on that too. Second question for you, Larry, on the subs that are using Kahua, that you've kind of made a requirement for them to use Kahua. Did you say that they're coming to the table with their own instance of Kahua and using the connected network, or are you providing them access to your instance? Which way is that going?
They're setting up their own domain and obtaining their own licenses. So it'll be a true Kahua network implementation. So they're not operating under our licenses.
Perfect.
And just to be frank, we just awarded those contracts late December, so we're in the process of getting that set up right now.
All right, Nicholas, another question for you. When it comes to CMMC requirements, what are some of the challenges that you foresee companies running into?
Oh, really interesting question. And I am, for the most part, going to defer. The challenge, what I know, and I've talked to about a dozen of the agencies that are offering certification programs. And what I know is that the challenge is going to be that it's a lengthy process. And bids are going to begin to be released requiring this. So you're going to need to get that provisional authorization quickly in order to just keep doing the projects that you've been doing. You know, these people that do small projects and continually award, you're going to need to get this certification pretty quickly. So I'd say the biggest challenge is that it's a big undertaking to get this. So again, I guess I do want to scare people into action. If federal contracting is part of your business, get ahead of this. You can't get ahead of this. You're already behind. So get on this right away. And I would say, and I'll ask our team, we've got a few web pages on the Kahua website that will give you some primers, some additional information. So I'd ask if we could put those in the chat for people to cut and paste those out, if we will. And maybe that's a good place to start. But you can go to a website called cyberab.org. Okay, that is the official website for. It's a nonprofit that runs the authorization process. It will show you the list of all the companies in America that can help you with the certification process, and all the companies that will help be your auditor. You can't have the same company do both, obviously. But you're going to need a consultant to walk you, kind of hold your hand and walk you through the process. You're going to need an auditing agent to do that part of it so that you can indeed get this certification. Go there, call your Kahua rep, call me. I'll be glad to refer you to some folks. We work with Deloitte. We work with Shellman, who was our FedRAMP advisor. We work with a company called Aprio. We'll be doing a webinar with them soon. There are many more. Those are some good answers. Glad to give folks more if they just contact us.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Larry, another one for you. You mentioned earlier that with the platform, you're able to configure Kahua to your processes versus the other way around. Can you expand on that a little more, what you mean by maybe change the user interface or the processes? Do you have an example you could share?
We have a process that we use during construction to manage directions that we give to the contractor that will eventually result in a change order. A change order can only be approved by our Board of Trustees. Our Board of Trustees awards contracts, and they have to approve any change to a contract. But our Board of Trustees only meets twice a month at the most, and some months there's only one meeting, and over the summer they may not have any meetings at all. And so we have to keep our projects going. So we have a process where we issue what we call a work change directive. If the documents are changed and the Division of the State Architect has approved the change, we need a way to authorize a contractor to proceed with the work, but under certain conditions. And those conditions might be, is it going to be a lump sum? Is it going to be time and materials? How is it going to be paid for? How will it be inspected during the course of the work? And so we have a document in Kahua that we call a work change directive. And that's built into our cost management approach, our cost management system, so that when a work change directive is issued, we can track that through the whole process. We can go into Kahua and say, what's the value of all the work that we've authorized under a work change directive that has not yet been formally approved by a change order by a board of trustees? Because we need to know that. Also, change orders for us in our public environment, there's a limit to 10% of the contract amount. So when we're doing a project and we're trying to decide, should we make this change or should we not, we need to know where we are in relation to that 10% limit. And so we built that process into Kahua. And I think we built it, initially it was built out specifically for us. I think some of that capability is built into the K-12 offering that Kahua has, but initially that was a process that we were able to map directly into the Kahua platform.
Those are two really good examples, because like a work change directive, I've heard of things like that before, where you need to authorize the work before everything's truly funded or approved. But like you said, I've never seen a system that's done that. I've seen side spreadsheets where we're trying to total all that work and understand what we have and haven't done. So those are great examples. Thank you. Well, that rounds out the questions that we've received. And so in construction-like fashion, we're going to finish early. And just by a couple minutes, but still give a few minutes back to everyone's day, just a couple here. But before we do that, I do want to say thank you to both Larry and Nicholas for your time today. It has been enlightening. I appreciate it. I learned a few things, and hopefully it was worth your time as well.